Shabbat Shalom. Happy Sabbath. This morning we would like to look at the subject, the maid in waiting. The maid in waiting. Now, we well know that a maid in waiting is usually a female person who is a helper in the noble court, somebody who assists the queen or somebody in high office to wake up and to be dressed, and sometimes a confidant. That's a lady or a maid in waiting, and that person is usually of a lower rank. And so this morning we want to look at that through the word of Yah, and we're going to use that maid in the book of Malekim, chapter 5, 2nd Malekim, as a periscope to look at the wider context of Yah's grace, His mercy, and indeed His love. So turn with me to the book of Malekim, 2nd Malekim, Malekim 2, chapter 5. And the word here reads, "And Naaman, commander of the army of the sovereign of Aram," that's Syria, "was a great man in the eyes of his master and highly respected, because by him Yahweh had given deliverance to Aram. And though a brave man, he was leprous." Even though he was well groomed, well positioned, he occupied a great office, and he was well respected by the people, the word said he suffered from leprosy. Leprosy, as you know, is symbolic of sin in the Bible. And how many people today are well educated, well positioned in high stations in life, wealth, well dressed, well spoken, but they too are leprous because their sins, Isaiah said in chapter 59 in verse 2, have separated them from Yah. They're leprous. So we have this Aramean, this man from Syria. He's a commander, and he's well loved by the king of Syria, and he's seemingly good at his job that he does. But the word said, is leprous. He's leprous. And Yah had given deliverance to Aram, and though a brave man, he was leprous. Now, in Israel, you know, when they had people who suffered with leprosy, they had to be separated from other people. And they had to declare themselves leprous. But it doesn't seem to be the same thing here in Syria, because he is a commander and yet he is still commingling with the people and doing his job. But the word says that, and the Arameans, the Syrians, had gone out on raids and had brought back a captive a young girl from the land of Yisrael, and she served the wife of Naaman. Our subject today is the maid in waiting. This is the young lady. So she is really a captive. They went on raids and they captured the people, and she's brought to Syria. It's not her homeland. And she said to her mistress, if only my master were with the Nabi, the prophet, who is in Samaria, then he would recover in his leprosy. Now, listen to the postulate here by this young lady. She's a captive. And she is taken to another country against her will. And her master, who is leprous, she could have taken the attitude and say, serve you right. But that's not the attitude that she brought with her. Not at all. So the golden simplicity here of her diction, which, as you can see, is not indigenous to that culture. The attitude that she brought is not indigenous to the environment where she's at. And so her diction yields to the fascination of a recognition by her master. Her attitude is one to be studied. It is made, her diction that is, with dignity and a great concern for those who are suffering. And it amplifies her belief in the Yah of Israel. And so if you look at that juxtapositional diction, when you compare what she brought with what was happening in Israel, you will see a difference. Most of the people in Israel were worshiping other gods. They were. But she knew that if only her master knew Elisha, she knew that it was not Elisha who was doing it, but it was Yah who was working through Elisha. And so that's the postulate that she presents. If only he could meet him, he would be healed. He would be healed. And the word says that, and Naaman went in and reported to his master, saying, thus and thus spoke the girl who is from the land of Israel. And the sovereign of Aram said, go, enter, and let me send a letter to the sovereign of Israel. I will send a letter. And he wrote a letter and sent it to the king of Israel. Remember, at that time, leprosy was considered incurable. And so when the king of Israel received the letter and he read it and he understood that, hey, this man is picking a fight with me. He's picking a quarrel with me. How dare he send a letter expecting me to cure a man's leprosy? But the word says that Elisha heard of the interaction, literary interaction between these two sovereigns. And decided that he would intervene because the king, verse 7 of chapter 5, and it came to be when the sovereign of Israel read the letter that he tore his garments and said, am I Elohim to kill and keep alive, that this man sends a man to me to recover him of his leprosy? For consider now and see how he is seeking an occasion with me. And it came to be when Elisha, the man of Elohim, heard that the sovereign of Israel had torn his garments, that he sent to the sovereign, saying, why have you torn your garment? Please let him come to me, so that he knows that there is a Nabi, there is a prophet in Israel. Let him come. Are you with me? Let him come. And Yah will demonstrate through me that there is not only a prophet in Israel, but there is a Yah in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses. I told you he's a man of high station. And chariot, and he stood at the entrance of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger. Elisha doesn't give him the courtesy of an audience. He doesn't do that. He doesn't come out to meet him. The word says in verse 10, and Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, go and you shall wash, how many times? 7 times in the Yarden, that's the Jordan, that your flesh might be restored to you and be cleaned. The whole emphasis here is for this man to believe the words of the prophets. And we're going to deal with that. The test is, the litmus test is for him to believe the words of the prophet. And it's no less for us today to believe the words of the prophets. When the prophet says, yes, and you ought to keep the Shabbat, and you say, no, you're not going to keep it, you are no better than this man. You're leprous. When the word says through the prophet, you ought to keep the feast days, and you said, your church says that you ought to keep them, you believe the words of your pastor, then you do the words of the prophets. The word said here, verse 11, but Naaman became wroth. He's angry. He's peeved. How often we become so impatient, pride, puffed up. You know who I am? I'm a commander in Syria. And you're asking me to go into that dirty Jordan River to wash myself. I have better rivers. Are not the Abana and the Pawpaw, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters in Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? And he turned and went away in a rage. He went away in a rage. Sometimes, our expectations of people are so inflated that when we see them and hear what perhaps they have to say, like Naaman, we become disappointed because it doesn't match the grandiosity of thoughts and ideas that we have about them. He doesn't come out to see me. And the word says in verse 13, and his servants came near and spoke to him and said, my father, if the Nabi, if the prophet had spoken to you a great matter, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? It's too simple. And he returned. At least he listened. He listened. He listened. Then he went down and dipped 7 times. How many times? 7 times, not 6. When Yah says do something 7 times, 6 will not do. Keep my 7th-day Sabbath holy, the first day will not do. Keep my feast days, Easter will not do. Christmas will not do. Halloween will not do. I don't care what your pastor or your bishop say or your priest say. Your duty is to obey Yah. You ought to obey him. That's the intent here, for you to obey. And I hear the Apostle Paul, Shaul, in his address to Agrippa. He wanted to know, most excellent sovereign, do you believe the prophets? Do you believe what they say? Do you believe? Turn with me to Acts chapter 26, and we will just look at 25, 27 there. The word says that Paul tells Governor Festus that he's not insane. Sometimes when you tell people the truth, they think you're mad. A madman doesn't speak like Paul does, giving him the respect that he deserves. Most excellent. That's how Paul addresses him. Paul is letting him know, I'm speaking rationally, cogently, and truthfully. King Agrippa, says Paul, believest thou the prophets? I know that you believe. These people, these Yehudians, these Jews, they know me. He's addressing them. They know that I was on their side at one time. I'm from the tribe of Benjamin, and I used to go into the places and arrest the people. I would carry letters and I would get authority to imprison them. I was there at Stephen's death. I held the coats of the people who stoned him to death. But I was on my way to Damascus one day, and a light shone and threw me to the ground. I saw it. And I cried out, because when I heard the voice saying, Shaul, Shaul, why persecutest thou me? I asked, who are you, Master? And Yeshua spoke to me in the Hebrew tongue. And I now believe the prophets. Do you, Agrippa, believe the prophets? So this maiden, this little girl, in a sense, represents the church. The Bible tells us there are 7 maidens in Isaiah who will take hold of one man, saying, we want his name, but we don't want his clothes, and we don't want his bread. But Naaman, you got to understand what's happening here, because Yeshua picks up this theme way back, way down there in Luke chapter 4, because Yeshua is trying to get them to think, and we will go there shortly. But the word says Naaman went down and dipped 7 times, just like he was told to do, according to the word of the man of Elohim, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was made clean. Are you with me? We read also in 2 Chronicles chapter 20 and verse 20 that, and they rose early in the morning and went forth into the wilderness of Tekoa. And as they went forth, Jehoshaphat stood and said, hear me, O Yehuda, and ye inhabitants of Jerusalem, believe in Yah your Elohim, so shall he be established. Believe his prophet, so shall he prosper. Believe the prophet, and you will prosper. Jehoshaphat is king of Judah, and he hears that the harm is coming against him of Moab and Ammon, and he doesn't know what to do. And so he goes to Yah and spreads his hands out, and is now letting the people know, believe the prophet and you will prosper. You know, it's interesting. Some of you will remember a few years ago, I had a ticket. And I was due to appear in court. And I came here in prior meeting, and I did exactly what this man did, Jehoshaphat. The letter they sent me, I spread it out here and read it to the congregation, and we prayed over it. And I received a letter soon after from the attorney saying the other attorney had filed his papers in the wrong court. And all now he has to do is to file a dismissal of the case, which he did. So Jehoshaphat says, believe the prophets and you will be established. Many people today are not established, perhaps in their business, but not in their personal life or in their spiritual life. And they can't understand why, because they don't believe the word of Yah. They don't believe. In Acts chapter 3, verses 24 to 26, and all the prophets who have spoken from Samuel and to those who came afterward on down, foretold these days, you are the sons of the prophets and of the covenant of Yah, gave to our fathers, saying to Abraham, and in your seed all the families of the earth will be blessed. When Yah raised up his servant, he sent him out first to bless you by turning everyone of you from your wickedness. Believe the word of the prophets. And in Luke 16, verse 31, he said, but he said unto him, if they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be persuaded, even if someone rises from the dead. So the emphasis here was for the church, this maiden in waiting for the bridegroom, because the maiden is attending to that bride, the city that is supposed to come. And therefore it was to advise the Naamans of this world what to do. But the last time we heard, the contemporary maiden is riding a beast. That's what we're told. But let's go back to chapter 5 of Malekim, Malekim. So the word says that he went down and he dipped 7 times. And he returned to the man of Elohim. He went back, at least to say thanks to Elisha, he and all his company, and came and stood before him and said, see, now I know that there is no Elohim in all the earth. This is a Gentile man. This is a Syrian man. Aramean saying that. There is no Elohim in all the earth except in Israel. And now please take a gift from your servant. Did you get that? In Israel, the people are worshiping idols. Well, at least you know that. And that's why Elijah had to take the Baal priest up on Mount Carmel and get rid of some of them. And as you know, Elisha was the one who took the mantle after Elisha was taken up in the chariot. Elijah was taken up in the chariot of fire. So, but this man in Syria is saying, no, I know there is no other Yah in all the world except the Yah of Israel. None. But today we watch the news and we hear missiles being fired from Syria, from Hamas, from Lebanon, and so on and so forth. And we're wondering, have they read the word? That your ancestors in Syria had made this comment, that there is no Yah but the Yah in Israel. And I'm not talking political Israel. I'm talking an Israel that believes in Messiah, an Israel that believes in a Mashiach, an Israel that keeps the Shabbat and keeps the feast days. That's the kind of Israel that I'm talking about. Galatians 6 and verse 16. So he declares that there is no Yah, but the Yah that is in Israel. And so as we approach the 7th month, the 4th day, the 4th Elul, the 4th, today is the 7th of what? September, which is the Gregorian. So it is the 4th day of Elul. And I just want to emphasize that for this particular reason. As I said, in a few weeks, we'll be moving into the month of Tishrei. That's the 7th month. And in that month, we have the Feast of Trumpets. We have the day of Yom Kippur. And we also have the day of Tabernacle. So that's the fall feast. And most believers that I know, they're waiting for the second coming of Yeshua. And it's based on this notion of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Come with me there, the book of Thessalonians, chapter 4, 16 and 17. For Yeshua himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of Yah, and the dead in Messiah shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with him in the clouds to meet the Master in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Master. So the church contemporary, the people religious, say that they're all waiting for this. Some say they're going to be translated. Others say they're going to be raptured. That's what they say. But they don't realize what this is saying. This is talking about the first day of the 7th month. We call Yom Teruah, the feast of blowing, the day of blowing, the feast of trumpets. So if this is the day that you're waiting for, remember the first day, which is the new moon of the 7th month, is a Sabbath. It's an annual Sabbath. Let me say that again. The new moon, the first day of the 7th month of Tishrei, is a Sabbath. It's an annual Sabbath. And Yah said it must be kept. But most of the denominational churches don't keep the annual Sabbath. So if this is the day that Yeshua is coming, they're going to miss it. They are going to miss this day. But they would say to me, and perhaps to you, but no man knoweth the day nor the hour. And he said that. Did he not? Yes, he did. What did he mean? They asked Yeshua, when will you come back again? When will these things happen? He said, no man knoweth the day nor the hour. Only my Father, not even the angels. But what was he saying? We've got to understand this is a Hebrew idiom. He was in fact telling them exactly when he's coming back. Remember, Passover and Tabernacle are kept in the full moon, in the middle of the month. But the Feast of Trumpet is new moon. No man knows when the new moon is coming. And at that time in Israel, it required two witnesses to watch on the mountain for the new moon, to watch the sliver. And when they saw that sliver of a moon, they would run to the Sanhedrin, who would approve the two witnesses and let everybody know that the new moon has arrived. That's what we're dealing with here. So Yeshua said, no man knows when the new moon is coming. No man know it. But he's telling them, I'm coming back in the Feast of Trumpet. This is why the writer here, Paul, is telling, when the trump sounds, when the shofar sounds, the dead in Yeshua will rise, and those who are alive will be caught up to meet him in the air. But some have concluded that the destination is heaven. No. The Bible says that two will be in the bed. Did he not say that? And one will be taken and another left. Where will they be taken? The one that is taken, where? He said it will be taken where the eagles come, where the carcasses are. Not good. Not good. Turn with me to Matthew. Matthew chapter 13. You know that's passage very well, and we will read 29 and 30. He said, but he said, nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in the bundle and burn them, but gather the wheat into the barn. Where is the barn? We know where the tears are going. Have you forgotten that the temple was built on Onan's threshing floor? Have you forgotten? The barn is on Mount Onan's threshing floor. That's where David built it. Psalm 132, 4 and 5 said, I will not give sleep to mine eyes, said David, or slumber till mine eyelid, until I find a place for Yahweh, a habitation for mighty Yah of Jacob. I will not sleep. Word says, at that time when David saw that Yah had answered him in the threshing floor of Oman, the Jebusite, then he sacrificed. This is First Chronicle chapter 21 and verse 28. Then David said, this is the house of Yahweh, and this is the altar of burnt offering for Yahweh. That's his barn. That's his barn. And so, you know, as we read this passage and other passages, we come to realize that the feast days, all of them, they are rehearsals for the main event. And you can understand why Shakespeare in his 7 stages of life made the comment that all the world is a stage. And all the men and women, they're simply what? Players. They have their exit and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. One man. And who has played a more significant part than Yeshua? It's our Passover, isn't it? It's interesting, and I almost get the impression that Shakespeare borrowed from the scriptures 7 stages, 7 feast days. The Passover. That's what we shouldn't miss at all. The 7 stages. Yeshua is also our first fruit. Is he not? He is our first fruit. He rose in first fruit. We mustn't forget that. He is our Pesach, or Passover. And of course, he is our unleavened bread, is he not? One man in his time, he plays many parts. He is our Shavuot, Pentecost. And he is our Yom Teruah, the trumpet, because the word said he would blow the trumpet, the shofar, and the dead in Yeshua will rise. And of course, he's our high priest, and it is he who comes on the day of atonement and makes the judgment. 1 John 5:12 says, the Father judgeth no man, but gives all judgment to the Son. And of course, Sukkot is our tabernacle. The word said he came and he tabernacled with us. So all feasts, I believe Shakespeare took from this, but the nuance of it we've missed. We've got to understand that. And so if that's the case, we need to ask ourselves a question. And that question is found in Leviticus chapter 23. Come with me there. It's not a new question. It's the same question that Paul asked Agrippa. It's the same question that Jehoshaphat asked Israel. Do you believe the prophets? So the question is not only perennial, it is urgent. At least for these contemporary generation. The people are waiting for the second coming of Yeshua, but they don't rehearse. These are rehearsal. And we see this in Genesis 1, verse 14. He said, I made the moon and the stars to speak to you. They are moed. They are for season. They are appointed times. You will know when I want to meet with you. The church says we won't keep them because Constantine said that. Do you believe the prophets? Do you believe the prophet? So come with me to chapter 23 of Leviticus, because Yah now is speaking through a prophet to speak to Israel. That's you and I. What do you mean, you and I? You may well say you're a Baptist or you're a Church of England or you're Seventh-day Adventist. Notice when we read Revelation 14 and when we read parts of Revelation, other part, it says the city has 12 gates. And the 12 gates, they have inscribed on them the names of the tribes of Israel. And you can try that for yourself. I see no gate for Baptists, none for Catholics, none for Seventh-day Adventists, none for Episcopalians, none for Lutheran. You mean Luther doesn't have a gate? No. What about Calvin? Oh no, Wesley doesn't have one either. They're all gates for the tribe of Israel. And when Moses wrote, Moses is writing not just for a present congregation, but for subsequent generation of the same congregation, Israel. We need to understand that. As I've often said, the church is a vehicle that was designed to travel to different places, pick up passengers, and bring to the destination of Israel, because Yah said, I have one flock. One flock, one baptism, one faith. You understand now what Paul is saying in chapter 4, 1 Timothy chapter 1. He said the Ruach speaks expressly in the last day that many will leave the faith. They are still in the church, but they have left the faith. And I'll show you why in chapter 23, why many have left the church, or should I say the faith, but they're in the churches, the denominational churches. Come with me. And Yahweh spake unto Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of Yahweh, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocation, even these are my feast. Did you hear that? Holy convocation, Mikra. That's what he's saying. They are holy Kodesh convocation, and I want you to meet. Speak to Israel. Tell Israel. Because their names are on the gates of the city. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Shabbat of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Yahweh in your dwelling. Did you hear that? Yah says the first feast day of his, not Jews, is the seventh-day Sabbath. It's the feast days. He says, speak to Israel and let them know. Let them know that. These are the feasts of Yahweh, not Jews. May I emphasize that point? Even holy convocation, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. Season meaning appointed times. Moed, Moedim. And it's the seventh feast that I mentioned earlier, starting with Pesach, Passover. And he made it clear that I have come to fulfill these, but not to destroy them, Matthew 5:17. Isaiah said he had come to magnify them. If somebody comes to show you how something is done, how can you say they're done away with? It doesn't make sense. Let's assume that you're learning to play the violin or the piano. And the teacher comes one day and taught you how to play certain tune and harmony. Would you then, after the teacher had gone, say, I don't need to rehearse anymore because he had just played it for me? Are you with me? And so we are foolish in our conceptions of such thoughts. No, he said, that's not how it is. It's not how it is. He said all of them must be kept. Verse 24, come there with me. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the seventh month, we're going into that now, the seventh month. As I indicated earlier, today is the, and I want to emphasize that point, the fourth day of Elul, the seventh day of September, Gregorian. Why am I driving that point home? Because Yeshua, when he went into the wilderness, and we're going to go there in a minute, he went in on the first day of Elul. So going back to the first century, today would have been the fourth day he was in the wilderness. And he spent 40 days. Jonah went to Nineveh the Assyrian Empire, the capital, on the first day of Elul. Understand that also. And perhaps you will then understand why Yeshua likened himself unto Jonah, saying, you will see no other sign except the sign of Jonah, in that I will spend 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Because both of them spent 40 days. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall we have a Sabbath. Did you hear that? We spoke about that a few minutes ago. It is the new moon. It is that new moon, the day, the annual Sabbath that everybody is talking about, that is here recorded in 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17, where you blow the trumpet. And this is why, this is why I believe that which is happening environmentally in America here with the Trump hat politically is a sign. It's a sign that something is about to happen. When you hear the sound of the trumpet, those who had been asleep and those who have been spiritually dead, it's time to wake up. Speak to the children of Israel. This is what Yah says. When the new moon comes in a few weeks' time, he said it's a memorial of blowing of trumpets and holy convocation. And again, I want to make the point, the majority of the denominational churches, they won't be keeping this because they have listened to Constantine, and Constantine said, do not Judaize. Do not keep it. So the question comes back, do you believe the prophets? Do you? You shall do no servile work, but they will be going to work therein, but he shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. And listen to me. These are the fall feast. These are the feasts that happen in where? The autumn. Let's reason then. Let's assume you say, all right, the Passover is through. Unleavened bread is through. First fruit is through. Pentecost is through. So you say, all right, this is your illogical reasoning. You're saying that the spring feasts are done away with. Well, let me throw in this postulate. What about the fall feast? They're not yet fulfilled. What about them? So why are you not keeping the fall feast then? Why? Yours argument is a logical fallacy. Doesn't make sense. These are rehearsal for the main event. There is a banquet coming up, a wedding banquet. You need to come to the rehearsal. Otherwise, you're not going to be part of this wedding banquet. You don't come to choir practice, you won't sing on Sabbath. Simple. Speak to the children of Israel. Also, on the 10th day of the 7th month, this is Yom Kippur, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and he shall afflict your soul. You shall what? Afflict your soul. It's a day of fasting. And offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. And ye shall do no work. You shall do no work. So we have on the first day of the 7th month a Sabbath. On the 10th day, we have another Sabbath. And on the 15th day, we have another Sabbath. And on the 8th day, we have another Sabbath. Wow. But the church says, we're not keeping it. The church is not listening to the little maiden. The church is supposed to be a maid in waiting. But the church is not on speaking terms with Naaman. The world is leprous. It's a leprous colony. But the maiden is not speaking to the leprous people about these things. So where then is Elisha? Where then? We want to know. And so the word says that you have left the faith. Well, who are you talking? I'm talking to you. You're not keeping the Sabbath. You're not keeping the feast day. You have left the faith. Long since. Oh, my conference says this. Your conference is no better than Gehazi if they're not following Yah. Are you with me? Because the word said, after Naaman had been healed, he went to pay respect to Elisha and offered Elisha money. Elisha said no. Gehazi said, how could you say no? How could you say no? Should we go back there? Come, because it makes sense. 2 Kings, chapter 5, verse 20. But Gehazi, a servant of Elisha, a man of Elohim, said, behold, my master had spared Naaman, this Syrian is not receiving at his hand that which he bought, but as Yahweh liveth, I will run after him and take some of what of him. I will take some of what he has. Hear me? Elijah, or Elisha, I should say, heals the man through the power of Yeshua, but refuses his money. Gehazi, and some churches like Gehazi, they will waive their own policy to get a donation. They will waive their policy of receiving money, like Gehazi. And don't tell anyone. Did you hear me? Gehazi did this quietly. And it doesn't matter what Dr. Vine said, Gehazi is not going to tell anybody. The word is here. Verse 21. So Gehazi followed after Naaman. Remember, Naaman was a leper, but he's now healed. And he's testified, he's declared that there is no other Yah but the Yah of Israel. Now, Gehazi is Elisha's assistant. Should he have known better or not? You would conclude that, wouldn't you? He should have known better. So Gehazi followed after Naaman, and when Naaman saw him running after him, he lighted down from his chariot to meet him and said, is all well? Is all well with you? Why are you running like that? You almost overtake me and I'm in a chariot. Why are you running like that? And he said, all is well. My master has sent me, saying, behold, lying again? He must have lied before. This isn't spontaneous, is it? Even now there become to me from Mount Ephraim. What? 2 young men of the sons of the prophet. Give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver and 2 changes of garment. 2 young men have come among us, and my master said, give them something. You know, sometimes people don't realize that when Yah gives a job to a man, he also gives him the tools to do the job. Are you with me? That when other people are playing around, they know because the Spirit reveals to them the kind of trickery that they get up to. Gehazi had been with Elisha. Elisha has a double portion of Elijah's spirit. Did he really conceive that he could do this and get away with it? So he lied, and Naaman said, be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags and 2 changes of garment, and laid them upon 2 of his servants, and they bare them before him. Whether you believe in prosperity gospel or not, the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. The world is doing this, and it has been doing this for years. But when the church gets into this mode, you see the church, the woman sitting on the beast's back, riding the beast, you know something is up. When the church will change its own policy, its ethical policy, its moral policy, just to receive money, it's no better than Gehazi. No better. And the word says, and when he came to the tower, he took them from their hand and bestowed them in the house, and he let the men go, and they departed. This is another Achan, isn't it? Are you with me? But he went in and stood before his master, and Elisha said unto him, whence cometh thou, Gehazi? Where are you coming from? And he said, thy servant went nowhere. He lied again. You're lying to a man of Yah. You know, sometimes you can see right through people, but they don't even realize that you can see through them. Spiritual things are spiritually discerned. He's lying. A man who should have known better is lying. And he said unto him, went not mine heart with thee? When the man turned again from his chariot to meet thee? How did you know this? That's what he's thinking. Is it time to receive money and to receive garments and olive yards and vineyards and sheep and oxen and men servant and maid servant? The leprosy, the sin. Therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper, as white as snow. Did you hear that? When the church follows the world, the sin of the world will come into the church. And what's interesting here It says, and this is the second time we're seeing this in the word. You remember Miriam? It says, when Miriam became leprous, she became white as snow. And here it says Gehazi became white as snow, giving the impression if they became white as snow, then they must have been another color before that. But that's just throwing out for consideration because the word is saying that. Oh, yes. So we're dealing with Elisha, a maid in waiting. Naaman, Gehazi, and we have also dealt with governor Festus. The word is clear. In Leviticus chapter 13, come with me there and we'll read verse 12 on. And if the leprous disease breaks out in the skin, if it breaks out in the skin, so that the leprous disease cover all the skin of the diseased person from head to foot, so far as the priest can see, then the priest shall look, and if the leprous disease has covered all his body, he shall pronounce him clean of the disease. It has all turned white, and he is clean. But when the raw flesh appears on him, he shall be unclean. Everybody's chasing money. But the word says most of them are unclean. You know, as humans, we are unique in a number of ways. That soul that Yah puts in us, it has this harmonic resonance. But it's individually complex. The energy culminating from our soul as this harmonic vibrational composition that is divinely personal. Only Yah can relate to it. Therein, one's energy is really a signature, an incredible combination of an amalgamated union of layered vibration centering towards heaven, towards Yah. That's what Jacob saw that day when he slept on the stone and his pineal gland opened up and his soul became alive. Oh, yes. And so we are divinely appointed spirits residing in houses of clay. That's who we are. We're unique. But they want to tell us, don't they, that we are the products of an explosion. We are a cosmic accident. Atoms exploded one day, and then they evolved, and we came from fish and monkeys. That's the science of this world. So for you, stubborn believers, let me read this to you because some of you have indicated that the feast days are for the Jews. And I want you to know that Noah was not a Jew. Adam was not a Jew. Abraham was not a Jew. Jacob was not a Jew. Seth was not a Jew. Did you hear me? Jared was not a Jew. And these men kept the feast days long before they were given to Moses. And I'm reading here from the book of Jubilee. From the book of Jubilee. And I'm reading from chapter 6. From chapter 6. Because the word says that Yah made a covenant with Noah. He made a covenant Noah. We see that in Genesis chapter 9. And I'm reading here from verse 15. It says, and he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not again be a flood on the earth. We understand that. But I'm reading from the second Genesis, which is the book of Jubilee. So we see coherence here between the two books. He set his bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant. We understand that. You're with me so far. And there should not again be a flood on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. For this reason, it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks. This is Pentecost. This is in Noah's time. He says they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year. This renewed the covenant every year. Noah knew this. Israel is not yet born. And this old festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation to the day of Noah, 26 jubilees and 5 weeks of year. And Noah and his sons observed it for 7 jubilees and 1 week of years till the day of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death, his sons did away with it until the day of Abraham, and they eat blood. But Abraham observed it. Abraham kept the feast days long before Isaac was born. And if Isaac was born, Jacob was not born. And if Jacob was not born, then Judah was not born, and there's no Jews. Are you with me? So when you come with your logical fallacy that the feast days are done away with, what are you talking about? You speak from a position of ignorance. It's only because Israel had forgotten them why Yah reminded them. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Let me close on this because you read in the book of Genesis that Noah went into the ark on the 10th day of the second month. You understand that. The 10th day. You know the 10th day is the day that they would take the lamb and examine the lamb. And Noah was in the ark for 7 days before the rain came. That's the second month. But we read in Numbers chapter 9 that if you're going to keep the Passover and you are defiled with a dead body or anything like that, you can keep it in the second month. This is the second month. And we can provide a postulate for that on the basis that Methuselah died in the year of the flood. And Noah would have buried him, and perhaps he had been defiled by the body, and therefore he kept it in the second month. And it rained. For how long? 40 days. It rained. And when he came out, what did Noah do? He built an altar to celebrate. These men, they kept the feast days, but a contemporary church says it will not keep the feast days. And so we read, therefore, in Luke chapter 4, that when Yeshua came out from the wilderness, because remember I said he went in on the first day of Elul and he spent 40 days. Now, if you go into the wilderness or you go anywhere on the first day, 40 days leads to the day of Yom Kippur of the second month. He came out on the day of judgment. So when he went into the temple and he read from the scroll, reading from the book of Isaiah, it was the day of judgment, Yom Kippur. That was the day, because the Jubilee can only be pronounced, declared on the day of judgment. And that's what Yeshua was doing. He was, and not only that, I want to say this, that the day that he went into the wilderness, but you know what? Let's go there, because I don't want you to say that I say, because Yah said, Luke chapter 4, and we're going to bring it together with this. Luke chapter 4, because the word says, and Yeshua, being full of the Ruach, returned from Yarden, the Jordan River, and led by the Spirit into the wilderness, being 40 days tempted by the adversary. Now, if you understand this, this is dealing with Leviticus chapter 16. When we talk about the scapegoat, I've heard it said by many well-meaning pastors that the scapegoat is Satan. That's what they said. What they're really saying implicitly, well, not even implicit, explicitly, is that Satan has a role to play in your atonement. That's what they're saying. That your sins are placed on Satan. And so one of the two goats that are killed in Leviticus 16 is Azazel, Satan. That's what they say. But I want to refute that idea and provide this postulate that when Yeshua went into the wilderness, led by the strong man, the Ruach, he was playing the role of the scapegoat. The word in Isaiah 53 said, all our iniquities are placed on him. He took our sins on him, not Satan. Satan doesn't take our sin. Only Yeshua can wash our sins away, not Satan. He is the scapegoat, because all the feast days, all the things have to be fulfilled in Yeshua. He said, in the volume of the book, I've come to do what? Do your will. Satan has no place in your atonement. None at all. So again, I'm only showing you how far the church has left the faith. The Spirit speaks expressly that in the last days the church will leave the faith, saying that Satan carries your sin. No, it says the Ruach led him into the Spirit, the strong man. That's why in Revelation chapter 20, you see after the millennium, a strong man come and bind Satan. What did they do with Satan? Bind him. Well, they bind him before the millennium. And then after the millennium, he's let loose. To come and do what? Do what he normally does. Tease you. Tempt you. And so I just want you to know that when Yeshua came out, he came out on the day of judgment. So he was still keeping what? The day of judgment. Where was he? In the temple. Where's the contemporary church on Yom Kippur? At work, at play, at the movies. You have lost your first love. And so let us just take to mind these things and realize that we need to rehearse for the main event. That is the coming of Yeshua, the King, our King, the only King and the only way. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.